Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Rooker, and I'm going to be doing the notes for day 2, which is factoring hard trinomials. The first thing I want you to do is the 2 review problems. So pause the video right now and do those 2 problems. When you unpause the video, I will have the solutions to those 2 problems up here. All right, here are the solutions to the 2 problems. The answer to number 1 is C. The answer to number 2 is 0 and 2. If you have any questions on those, please ask your teacher tomorrow in class. All right, so I'm going to get right into the lesson since it's a little bit long. Today you're going to be factoring hard trinomials. A hard trinomial, a trinomial means something that has 3 terms, a polynomial that has 3 terms. Remember, terms are separated by addition or subtraction symbols. So that has 3 terms. This is written in standard form. Standard form means it goes in order by degree. So this is, and degree is the exponent. So this is second degree. This is first degree. This is technically considered 0 degree because there's no x there. It's like x to the 0 power. So that's in order by degree, starting with the largest degree. All right, so to factor these, we are going to use a big X method. Basically what this big X method does is it helps us to find the 2 numbers that we will be able to split our middle term with. The whole point of wanting to split the middle term is to split this into something with 4 terms. We want 4 terms so that we can use the factor by grouping method that Mr. McGough taught you in the video for day 1. So a trinomial has 3 terms. We want to split this middle term into 2 separate terms, which would make the trinomial now have 4 terms. So the way you split the middle term is by finding factors of the leading coefficient times the constant term. We want to find factors of those that add to your middle term. So that sounds kind of wordy. I'm just going to do this first example and then we'll go from there. So the first thing I want you to do is draw a big X. To find the number that goes at the top of the big X, you are always going to multiply the leading coefficient. So that means the first number by the last number. That's the constant. So first times last gives you the top number. That's our A times C gives us the top number. 2 times 7 is 14. Then to find the bottom number, you just put the middle term, which is your B value. So 9 goes at the bottom. Then the goal is to find 2 numbers that multiply to give you the top number, but add to give you the bottom number. So what multiplies to give you 14, but adds to give you 9. What I like to do, especially for students who are new to doing this, I like to have you write out all of the factors of 14, meaning all the numbers that multiply to give you 14. 1 times 14 gives you 14. 2 times 7 gives you 14. 3 doesn't go into 14. 4 doesn't go into 14. 5 doesn't go in. 6 doesn't go in. 7 does go in, but I already have 7 written down. Since I already have that, I know that I'm done with my list of factors. So I just go in order, starting with 1 until I start repeating, and then I know my list is done. All right, then I look at these 2 and these 2, or this combination and this combination, and I decide which one adds to give us 9. 2 plus 7 gives us 9. So those are the 2 numbers that go onto the side. Oops. All right, once I find these 2 numbers, these are the numbers that I use to split my middle term. So my next step is to rewrite this 2x squared, but instead of 9x, I'm going to split it into 2x and 7x. and then everything else stays the same. So the first term stayed the same, the middle term split, and the last term stayed the same. So all we did was split the middle term. If you were to combine these two terms again, you would get back to 9x. So we didn't really change anything, we just split it into 4 terms. The whole point of splitting it into 4 terms was so that we could do factor by grouping. All right, I do factor by grouping probably slightly different than Mr. McGough does, but it's the same idea. When I do factor by grouping, I just put a line down the middle. I don't love parentheses because I can be a little unorganized and it gets a little messy for me when I have parentheses. So I just split it down the middle with a line. I split 2 terms on the left, 2 terms on the right. Then I just look at these first 2 terms and I factor out a GCF. If you look at the numbers, it has a 2 on both of them, so 2 is a part of the GCF. And then look at the x's. They each have at least one x, so the GCF is going to be 2x. Then I divide both terms by the GCF, because that's what we do when we factor out a GCF. So when I divide this first term by the GCF, which was 2x, I'm left with just x. When I divide the second term by the GCF, which is 2x, I'm left with just 1. All right, then what I do is, because we're factor by grouping, and we always want the same thing inside parentheses when we factor by grouping, I just copy this x plus 1 over here, because I know I want to have the same thing on the left that I have on the right. Then my next step is to look at these 2 terms, and I determine what I would have to factor out of those 2 terms in order to get x plus 1. The thing I would have to factor out is a 7 on this one. All right, last step. The thing that I have 2 of, that becomes one of my factors. And then the numbers that are outside of the parentheses, I call those my leftovers. Those combine to make my other factor, 2x plus 7. And that is my final answer. So let's recap. We had 3 terms in the very beginning, and we need to split them into 4 terms. In order to split 3 terms into 4 terms, I do this big X method to find the 2 numbers that my middle term will split into. To find the number at the top of the big X, I multiply the first term times the last term. To find the number at the bottom of the big X, I just do the middle number. Then I find 2 numbers that multiply to give me 14, but add to give me 9, and that's 2 and 7. That's what was used to split the middle term. The middle term became 2x and 7x. Then I do factor by grouping. All right, so let's do that same process over again with number 2. So to find the number that goes at the top of the big X, different colors. To find that number, I multiply a times c. So 3 times negative 20, which is negative 60. All right. Then the next thing I do is find the middle number. To find the middle number, I just do the b value, 7. So it's always a times c for the top, and the b value goes at the bottom. All right, then I need to think of all the factors of 60 that will add to give me 7. Now, there's a negative here, which tells me that there is going to be a negative somewhere in my factors. So when I'm writing out my factors of 60, I need to keep in mind that some of my numbers will end up being negative. So 60, the factors of 60 are, where should I write them? I'll write them over here. 1 and 60, 2 and 30, 3 and 20, 4 goes in. If you don't know how many times 4 goes in, or if 4 goes in, you just divide 60 by 4. When you divide 60 by 4, you get 15. 5 goes in. That's going to be 5 and 13. No, sorry, 5 and 12. 6 goes in. That's going to be 6 and 10. 7 doesn't go in. 8 doesn't go in. 9 doesn't go in. 10 goes in, but I already have 10, which means I'm done. But one or two of these numbers will be negative. So the next thing I look at is, I know I want to multiply to a negative. I need to multiply to negative 60, which means one of our factors needs to be positive and one needs to be negative. If you combine a positive and a negative number, it's like you're finding the difference between the two. So instead of trying to find two numbers that add to give us 7, we're now really trying to find two numbers that subtract and give us 7. So we look at this list and we look at which ones would subtract to give us 7, and that's going to be 12 and 5. The difference between 12 and 5 is 7. So my numbers are 12 and 5. Oops. But one of them needs to be negative. I need to look and decide which one needs to be negative in order to add to give us positive 7. In order to give us positive 7, the larger one needs to stay positive, so this one must be the negative one. The 5 must be negative. So my special numbers are 12 and negative 5. That's what I use to split the middle term, 12x and negative 5x. The order doesn't matter on those. You could have had negative 5x first and 12x second. Your work will look a little different when you're factor by grouping, but your answer should be the same in the end. 3x squared stays the same, and negative 20 stays the same. But the middle term, the 7x, split into 12x and negative 5x. Now we do factor by grouping. I split this down the middle, and then I factor out these two terms. The GCF between 3x squared and 12x is 3x. 3x goes into both of those. Divide both terms by 3x. I'm left with x on the first one. Divide 12x by 3x, I'm left with 4. Then, because I know I want to end up with x plus 4 on the other side, I just copy it over. And then I look at these two, and I have to determine what I have to factor out of negative 5x and negative 20 to get positive x plus 4. What would I have to divide negative 5x by to get just x? And the answer is negative 5. If I divide both of these terms by negative 5, I get x plus 4. All right, and then the final thing is, the thing that I have 2 of becomes one of my factors. So x plus 4 is one of my factors. Then the leftovers, the numbers on the outside, combine to give me my other factor. And we're done. Right. Next one. To find the number at the top of the big X, I multiply A times C. So negative 5 times negative 20, which is positive 100. To find the, 100. The number at the bottom of the X is just the B value, so 29. I need to think of factors of 100. So that's going to be 1 and 100, 2 and 50. 3 doesn't go in evenly to 100. 4 goes in, 4 times 25. 5 goes in, that's 5 times 20. 6 doesn't go in evenly. If you don't know that, that's okay. Just use your calculator. 100 divided by 6 doesn't go in evenly. Then do 100 divided by 7. That doesn't go in evenly either. 100 divided by 8 doesn't go in evenly. 100 divided by 9 doesn't go in evenly. 100 divided by 10 does go in evenly. That's going to be 10 times 10. Since we got 10 twice, it's starting to repeat itself. That means we're done with our list of factors. All right, then we need to find the 2 that add to give us 29. This one's a pretty easy one because we don't need to worry about negatives on either of these numbers. So we just need to find the 2 that add to give us 29, and that's going to be 4 and 25. Those are the 2 numbers that are going to split our middle term, 4x and 25x. The middle term just split into 4x and 25x. The other terms stayed the same. So negative 5x squared plus 4x plus 25x minus 20. All right, now that I have 1, 2, 3, 4 terms, I split down the middle and I factor out the first two terms. One thing to remember that a lot of students forget is if there is a negative in the very front, you need to factor that out. So if there's a negative on the first term, that needs to be a part of the GCF. So the GCF is going to be negative. Nothing goes into both 5 and 4, but there is an x on each. So the GCF is going to be negative x. All right, and then I divide out a negative x. I'm left with 5x. Oops, not plus. When I divide by a negative, this positive becomes a negative, minus 4. Then I copy that over here, 5x minus 4. What would I have to divide 25 by to get 5? The answer is 5. And it works for the other one as well. If I divide negative 20 by 5, I also get 4. Right, then the thing that I have 2 of is this 5x minus 4. That becomes one of my factors. And then the other factor is the leftovers, negative x plus 5. Now I had mentioned it just a minute ago that if there is a negative in the front, it needs to get factored out. And actually, this would have been better if I had factored this out in the very beginning. I should have factored out the negative. It'll save you work in the long run. So first thing you should do is factor out any negatives or GCF. But since I didn't, I'll just factor it out in the end. So I'm going to factor this negative out. Negative, this will be x minus 5. Everything becomes opposite when you divide it by negative 1. And then this just stays the same, 5x plus 4. All right, wow, I need to get moving faster. So we're going to find the zeros, which means we're going to factor, then set it equal to 0 and solve. So to factor this, to find the number that goes at the top of the big X, I multiply a times c. I get negative 42. Bottom of the big X is going to be negative 1. I think of the factors of negative 42. So 1 and 42, 2 and 21, 3 and 14, I think. But I want these factors to only be 1 apart from each other because I want to be able to combine them and get just 1. I know that 6 times 7 is 42, so I don't even need to write out the whole list. I can just do 6 and 7. The larger one will have to be negative in order to combine to give us a negative. So those are the two numbers that we'll split our middle term into, 6x and negative 7x. The other two terms will just stay the same, so 2x squared plus 6x minus 7x minus 21. Now that I have 4 terms, I put a line down the middle, and I factor out a GCF. So I'm going to factor a 2x out of those first 2 terms. When I divide each by 2x, I'm left with x. Divide the second one by 2x, I'm left with 3. I copy that over here. Then I divide out a negative 7 from these two in order to get x plus 3. The thing that I have 2 of is one of my factors. Oops, 3, x plus 3. Then the leftovers is one of my factors, 2x minus 7. Since this was a problem where I was trying to find the zeros, I need to set each factor equal to 0. That's what finding the zeros means. Set each factor equal to 0 and solve. X plus 3 equals 0, and 2x minus 7 equals 0. Subtract 3 from both sides. X equals negative 3. Add 7 to both sides. 2x equals 7. Divide by 2, x equals 7 halves. So those are my 2 answers. All right. Feel free to pause the video if I'm going too fast. All right, next one. To find the numbers that go at the top, I multiply a times c. 4 times 6 is 24. At the bottom, I have negative 25. That's the middle number. Factors of 24. 1 and 24 is one that people forget about a lot, even though it's a pretty easy one. 1 times 24. That adds to give us 25. The issue is I need to add to give us negative 25. Remember, a negative times a negative is also a positive. So if those are both negative, they'll multiply to give us positive 24, and they'll add to give us negative 25. I use those two numbers to split this middle term, negative 1x and negative 24x. The other two terms just stay the same, 4x squared and positive 6. Now that I have 4 terms, I split a line down the middle, and I factor by grouping. Oof, I wanted to use the rainbow pen, but it's kind of hard to follow. All right, the GCF for these first two terms is just x. Divide each by x, I'm left with 4x minus 1. That's what I'm going to copy over here, 4x minus 1. What do I have to divide negative 24 by to get positive 4? The answer is negative 6. And it works for both terms. If I divide both of those by negative 6, I get 4x minus 1. All right, now, the thing that I have 2 of, that becomes one of my factors, so 4x minus 1. And then my other factors are my leftovers, x minus 6. Remember, we're supposed to be finding the zeros, which means we set each factor equal to 0. 4x minus 1 equals 0, and x minus 6 equals 0, and then we solve. Add 1 to both sides, 4x equals 1. Divide by 4, x equals 1/4. Add 6 to both sides, x equals 6. All right, almost done. What I'm going to do is just set up these problems, and then I'm going to have you guys solve these on your own. Find the roots of the following equations. That's just another way of saying set equal to 0 and solve. So set equal to 0 and solve. If it says find the roots, if it says find the zeros, if it says find the x-intercepts, that's one that we'll talk a lot more about later. Those all mean the same thing, set equal to 0 and solve. What I would personally do on number 6 is I would move everything to the right side. The reason is I want this to be a positive. I like when my leading coefficient is positive if possible. So I'm going to add w squared to both sides, and then I'm going to subtract 8w from both sides, so that I can move both the w squared and the 8w to the other side. So on the other side, I'm going to have w squared first, then negative 8w, then positive 12. I like it to be in order by degree. So the squared first, then the w, then the constant. All right, then you are going to factor this using the big X. Okay. The next one, same thing, except this time I'm going to move all of this stuff over to the left. To move this over to the left, I'm going to do the opposite of all of these things. So the opposite of subtracting 2 is adding 2. The opposite of plus 3x is minus 3x. And the opposite of minus 4x squared is plus 4x squared. And then I'm going to do that same thing to the other side. So this is going to be, I'm going to line the 4x squared under the 3x squared. I'm going to line the negative 3x under the 18x. And then the 2 can't combine with anything, so I'm just going to kind of leave that on its own, plus 2. These all cancel, and then I combine like terms on the left side. I have 7x squared plus 15x plus 2 equals 0. Then you are going to factor that using the big X and set each factor equal to 0. I want you guys to try those on your own, so pause the video, and then when you unpause the video, I will show the solutions. For the solutions, if you have any questions on any of this, please ask your teacher tomorrow in class. All right, thank you guys.